On Tech News Today, the Sony Pictures hackers are back with new threats against the company. Plus, a horrible secret in the world of Linux has been uncovered. And are you tired of passwords? Help is on the way. Tech News Today is next.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by CacheFly at CACHEFLY.com. Hi, this is Leo Laporte, and if you'd like to help us design our new website, I invite you to visit twit.to/navtest. We've got 8 quick questions we'd like to ask you that will help us make the navigation easier to use. That's twit.to/navtest. Thanks a lot.
This is Tech News Today for Tuesday, December 9th, 2014. This episode is brought to you by SmartThings. SmartThings let you control and monitor your home from anywhere in the world using your smartphone. To get started, visit smartthings.com/twit and you'll save 10% off any home security or solution kit when you use the code TWIT10 at checkout. And by ZipRecruiter. ZipRecruiter makes hiring faster, easier, and cheaper. Post your jobs to 100-plus job boards with one click. Try ZipRecruiter with a free 4-day trial now at ZipRecruiter.com/TNT. That's ZipRecruiter.com/TNT. Tech News Today is the show where we talk about the tech news of the journalists who report it. Welcome to the show. I'm Mike Elgan, and good morning, Jason Cleanthes. How you doing, man?
I'm doing pretty good, just getting things squared away.
Yes. Jason has just begun the extremely high pressure and difficult part of his job, which is doing the technical direction. He's been the producer for a couple of weeks now. He's got enormous amounts of experience, but nothing can prepare you to do this show. And I've seen him come and I've seen him go, and this kid's got it, I tell you. We also have Joe Panettieri as our co-anchor. How you doing, Joe?
I'm doing fantastic. You haven't cracked me yet, Mike.
Well, we'll work on it. Now, I understand that you're in the middle of horrible weather. What's going on?
Horrible weather. Yeah, there's a nor'easter blowing through here in New York. It's pretty nasty out there. I wish it was snow because they're talking 3 inches of rain, and you do the math and yada yada yada. That would have been a lot of snow.
Long Island, as you know, I lived there for a while, and the weather can be really, really crazy in winter, in the summer. It's very nice in the spring, though, so it's nice all year round, but there's some serious weather on Long Island. Anyway, good luck. I hope you survive it. Let's get right into the news. The hackers who breached Sony Pictures, stole gigabytes of data, then destroyed that data, warned the company 3 days before the attack about the coming attack. An email sent to Sony Pictures CEO Michael Linton, Chairman Amy Pascal, and other executives demanded money. Pay the damage, they said, or Sony Pictures will be bombarded as a whole. Weird language. The email was signed as God's Apostles, a phrase found inside some of the malware used in the November 24th attack. In related news, the hackers warned Sony Pictures yesterday to pull the Seth Rogen and James Franco comedy The Interview from circulation, saying, quote, "Stop immediately showing the movie of terrorism, which can break the regional peace and cause the war," unquote. Hey, we all hate James Franco, but I don't think it's terrorism. Come on. Lorenzo Franceschi-Bicchierai, who co-authored the story for Mashable with Christina Warren, joins us now. How's it going, Lorenzo?
Hi, Mike. Thanks for having me.
I'm so glad you're here. And I gave a version of the pronunciation of your name, the American version, which has to be a little sloppy around the edges. That's just how it is, man. This is the United States of America, and we pronounce things like that. So sorry about that. Quick question for you. The hackers demanded monetary compensation to prevent, quote, great damage. Did they specify an amount? Are they really serious about this sort of blackmail, or were they just throwing that threat out there?
Yeah, they didn't specify any amount, and we were not able to find any other emails prior to that one. And that doesn't mean that there were not other emails. They might have sent an email to somebody else that was not, whose email has not been leaked yet. So in that email, there was definitely no specific amount of money. Whether they're serious, I mean, it's really hard to tell at this point. Like, any of the threats that they've made after the hack, I think should be taken less seriously, because at that point it was public and, in the news. So these hackers could be, so to speak, trolling us. But that email, I tend to take it a little bit more seriously because it was sort of a private email directed only at Sony. So I think that could give us some hints to the real motives. They might really wanted money.
Hey, Lorenzo, is there any new evidence or proof that these hacks came or involved North Korea, or is that just a theory, and maybe a theory that is declining at this point?
Yeah, so far there is no more evidence. I mean, the only evidence that we found so far, and this is obviously with a caveat that the only people that really know exactly all the evidence that's been left after the hack are Sony itself and Mandiant, the company hired to clean up the mess and investigate the hack. But some evidence has been published around because other security companies have been going through the malware samples that have been published and shared with them. And based on that, the only evidence that links to North Korea is the fact that some of the malware was compiled on a machine compatible with the Korean language. Some security researchers say that that's an easy thing to fake, and some attacker could easily have planted that evidence just to throw us off. Other than that, we have the claims of the hackers, but in some messages, like the one yesterday that Mike mentioned, they asked for the interview to not be released. But in other messages, in multiple other messages, they never mentioned North Korea. They never mentioned Kim Jong-un, and they made more vague, references to Sony acting in in an evil way and talking about how this is basically revenge. We don't know exactly for what. So at this point, I mean, in my opinion, the North Korean theory is still pretty thin, and it might actually, as you said, be less convincing after yesterday's revelation that they asked for money 3 days before. Because why would North Korea ask for money, right?
Pretty much North Korea asks for money all the time. That's what they do whenever they threaten people with nuclear annihilation. But Sony isn't going to be able to provide that kind of money. So in light of this news, I have a new theory. Malicious hackers oftentimes hack things, and then they pick some cause. Sometimes they're legitimate hacktivists who hack because they genuinely believe in a cause. That's why they're doing the hack. A lot of times, though, hackers try to get into breach any system they can, and after they've done so, they don't want to just say, "Oh, we hacked for no reason." They want to say, "Oh, we're blaming you for this, that, and the other thing." And that's what it sounds like in this case, because there was no mention of North Korea before the attack, but then after, with all the press, now they're playing it up, talking about the movie, all that kind of stuff. It sounds to me like they hacked Sony Pictures because their security was horrible, as we've seen in the subsequent reports. They just had no security. They had all the passwords in a file labeled passwords, that sort of thing. And then so it was easy to hack. They did the hack, and then there was all this press about the North Korea theory, and then after that press hit, that's when they started playing up the North Korea angle, for laughs. What do you think of that theory? Is that plausible?
Yeah, I would side with you on that theory. I still believe that there might be some monetary motive. Maybe they didn't really want money, but they would try it. Well, we can try. Maybe they'll give it to us. And as you said, probably they just wanted to break into things because they could, and it was easy. There's still the theory that maybe they had an insider who was for some reason, angry at Sony. But mostly, yes, the North Korea theory just sounds like after all the attention that they got and the theories were thrown around, the hackers started just playing with us. There was actually another thing that we mentioned yesterday in a story was a tweet directed at a freelance writer that writes for The Guardian and other publications. And he received an email from the hackers with the email was signed North Korean Cyber Army. And it included also a message in Korean that didn't make any sense. It was Korean, but it was jumbled and not in the right order. So it didn't seem like it was coming from a North Korean speaker.
Hey, Lorenzo, what about Sony's history with Sony PlayStation Network? Now, that network has had crashes before. I think it's had security incidents before. Could this be a case of the hackers had already been familiar with how to hack the PlayStation Network and then basically went after the broader Sony?
It could be, but at the same time, Sony Pictures Entertainment, which is the Sony company that's been hacked in this case is like separate. As far as I know, their networks are separate. They're actually separate companies. So like that's possible. Like it's possible that the attackers who have been going after Sony PlayStation are the same, but it seems like it's a different kind of attack because as far as I know, all the PlayStation attacks have been mostly denial of service to take down the network and deny people from connecting. Whereas here, it seems like it's an intrusion that happened at least a few weeks before the actual hack became public. The hackers stole a lot of documents, and then after their demands were not met, assuming they actually wanted them to be met, they released this destructive malware that destroyed the entire systems.
Lorenzo, I saw online that you attended the University of Barcelona. Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
That's an awesome city, isn't it? I lived there for a little while. And did you grow up in Barcelona, or did you just go to school there?
So I was born in Barcelona, then I went back to Italy almost right away, and then I came back to Barcelona for high school and college.
Okay.
So it's like I split my life between Italy and Spain.
Awesome. Very, very, very cool. And I want to thank you for coming on the show. Lorenzo Franceschi-Bicchierai. I'm sorry about that. It's a tough name. Is it LorenzoFB.com? You can find him there. You can also find him on Twitter at LorenzoFB. Thanks for joining us, Lorenzo.
Thank you so much again, Mike.
All right.
My pleasure.
In just a sec, we're going to talk about trouble in Linux land. But first, I want to tell you about SmartThings. We all want a smart home. We all want home automation. It's just so cool to do, so powerful, so secure. But the problem is, until now, it's been very expensive and difficult to do. But with SmartThings, one of our sponsors today, you can do it super easily and very inexpensively. You can do all kinds of stuff. You can control and automate your lights. For example, you can have the lights and the heating and all that stuff turn off when you leave and then turn back on when you come home. Very convenient and also save you a lot of money on electricity. You can have a SmartThings presence sensor, which can trigger different actions when you come and go. For example, as I just said, turning off and on the lights. You can have the coffee machine turn on automatically in the morning. You can do all kinds of stuff. Here's a really cool thing you can do. If you don't have a dog, you can have a motion sensor trigger the sound of a dog barking through your Sonos. How cool is that? And you can, pick a big dog. Don't have the sound of a chihuahua or something like that. And that could scare away an intruder. Using the SmartThings app, you can easily see what's happening in every room with all of your connected devices. It's like having your entire home right in the palm of your hand. And the great thing about SmartThings is that the possibilities are endless. If you're a developer, you can create SmartThings and you can share them with other people. And you can also connect your SmartThings system with existing connected devices from companies like Logitech, Dropcam, Nest, Sonos, and Philips. It's really powerful. It's a powerful way to bring together all the stuff that you already have, plus add a lot more powerful capabilities very inexpensively. To get started creating your smart home, visit smartthings.com/twit, and you'll save 10% off any home security or solution kit by entering the code TWIT10 at checkout. The 10 in TWIT10 is for 10% off. For fans of Twit, solution kits start at just $170, and home security kits start at $350. $350 for home security. That is an amazing price. Each kit includes a SmartThings hub with everything you need to turn your home into a smart home in little as 15 minutes. You'll also get free shipping within the U.S. That's smartthings.com/twit. And remember, make sure you enter the code TWIT10 at checkout. Well, Joe, looks like there's problems in the world of Linux, and it's been with us for quite a while. What's going on?
Yeah, and thank God we've got an expert to really shape the story for us. Basically, we've got a Linux malware story that may stretch across 45 countries and date back more than 4 years. Now, here to bring us some insights as to what's going on is Steve Gibson, the founder of Gibson Research Corp, and he's also the host of our very own Twitch Security Now. Steve, how you been?
Hey, guys. Great to be with you.
Good to be with you as well. Thank you very much for sharing some insights. What exactly is going on here? Wasn't this malware originally Windows related, and now we're talking Linux?
Okay, so yes, this was found and is believed to date maybe as far back as 2008. It's been known as an unpronounceable name, Uroburos, Uroburos, also known as Snake, and we like to call it Snake because we know how to pronounce that. And now it's also become known as Turla, Turla. In previous years, It's always been Windows-based, both 32-bit and 64-bit. It's gotten into systems using zero-day exploits, 2 known zero-day exploits, and also whoever is behind this has set up a vast network of watering holes, which are fake websites that they lure their targets to visit, and then use things like infected fake Flash players, tell them that, oh, your Flash player is downloaded, click here to update your version of Flash, and in fact what you're doing is installing the malware that they want you to install. So the big news that has brought this back, because this is, as I said, this is a so-called APT, an advanced persistent threat that has been known about for years. The authors generally use off-the-shelf code and then modify it. So what's changed is it's now jumped platforms. It's this so-called Turla that's just now in the news the last couple days. A couple samples were uploaded to the common malware testing sites, and that triggered some alarms from people because they saw some pattern matches. So this is Linux malware for the first time, but also part of the same family. Looking at the code, they can see commonalities. They know, for example, that the coders work, believe it or not, a 9-to-5 work week. And
wow, that's good work if you can get it.
from the timestamps on the compilations of the files. So they have their weekends off. And they set their clocks to UTC +4 is the time zone they're in. So the overall belief is that this is Russian government-sponsored advanced espionage malware, much the way, we've seen, our own malware coming from the West aimed at the East, based on the countries where this has been found. They found little tiny samples of it 32 times in the Ukraine since 2010, 11 times in Lithuania, 4 times in the UK, and then a handful of times here in the United States, in Belgium, Georgia, Romania, Hungary, and Italy. So a little more Western leaning than the pattern that we've seen of the stuff that we probably think that we're behind. And it operates on Linux in a weird way. No one has figured out yet how it's getting into the Linux systems. The assumption is that it's still getting in via Windows, and that's allowing the attackers to get into the internal networks. And then they have a version now that runs on Linux, and so they squirt it, through the internal network onto those machines to make it more prevalent. They have found, for example, that it also has a rootkit component, and that is over on the Windows side, and Turla does also. And they often run sort of like paired sets of rootkits which help to support each other. In case one is found, the other one is able to still get connected and then reestablish communications. In the case of the Linux system, it installs a packet sniffer which looks for specific incoming values in TCP and UDP packet headers, and if it sees one, it uses raw sockets in order to be able to sniff the traffic. If it sees one, then it establishes a standard outbound connection to the same IP from which that incoming traffic was seen, and then waits for commands. So that's really sneaky. What that means is that these Linux machines are publicly available servers because you need to be able to receive incoming public traffic. So this thing gets into an organization's network that is also running a web server or a server of some sort. Yeah, could be email server, but on the Linux platform. Installs itself there, then starts waiting for incoming traffic. Then the command and control server that could be anywhere in the world sends some specially crafted packets at that publicly available IP. And the sniffer senses those packets and then establishes a reverse outbound connection to the IP that the packets came from, and then they have full command, essentially remote console command control.
So, Steve, I guess the takeaway for people who are responsible for Linux systems obviously is, this is very new information, but what should they do right now? What's the first thing? Of course, it's been around for 4 years, so what's the rush? But what's the first thing people should do to protect themselves from this?
The overall best policy that we're beginning to see evolve is monitoring. That is, this will be odd behavior for a Linux server. The nature of this is such that that Linux systems that don't have public contact are not going to be targets. They're not going to be able to receive specially crafted, just sort of like raw TCP and UDP packets. So it's only servers that are public facing that even if Linux machines were infected that did not have a public-facing set of access, this would have no effect on them because it's specifically to infect servers that are then able to receive incoming traffic from the outside. Any kind of filtering would alter the headers in these packets, so they have to be, the actual traffic coming in. So if you're behind any sort of front-end appliance, that's going to filter the traffic and prevent the bad guys from being able to get those packets to you in order to trigger the conversation. But mostly, I would say behavior monitoring. The state of the art now is to watch the behavior of your systems. For example, you were just talking about the massive Sony breach that we'll be talking about in today's Security Now podcast as well. Had Sony been watching the behavior, they would have noticed that their servers were serving their own content in BitTorrent, BitTorrent network, and that sort of immediately set off red flags. The fact that they weren't aware of that, it was like a fault of theirs, and just like one more way that Sony security has, failed, as it always does. But the best thing you can do, the way now to find these things is look for the behavior of the traffic on your network, and unfortunately, that's not an easy thing to do. It really requires some determination. It's not just like download this and run a scan. Because this stuff all hides itself now. Yeah,
apparently hides itself very well. Now, Steve is going to be talking about this topic in detail, far more detail on Security Now at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern, today here on the Twit Network. That's live.twit.tv at 1 p.m. Pacific. Steve Gibson is at grc.com, and you can follow him on Twitter at sggrc. Steve, thank you so much for explaining this incredible new news here.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Joe. See you.
All right.
Take care.
A password management service called Dashlane announced a new feature today. It lets you change all your passwords with a single click, including accounts with two-factor authentication. That actually takes a little bit more than a single click, but still, it's very easy. The feature is called Password Changer, and it'll work with some 75 websites, including Amazon, Apple, Facebook, Google, LinkedIn, PayPal, Pinterest, and Twitter. Password Changer was made possible by the company's acquisition of the New York startup Passomatic. The company plans to add a feature later that will automatically change your passwords on a regular basis. Joe Panettieri, I gotta have it. This sounds really, really convenient.
A gotta have, definitely. And this move comes maybe a week or two after Intel went out and bought a password management company up in Canada as well. We're seeing a bunch of startups get acquired by network management companies that are trying to manage passwords. And Mike, I think we're at an inflection point. Either A, you're going to do something to manage your passwords, or B, you're going to dump them entirely and go with a new type of technology, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. But yeah, this is an exciting day.
It really is, and to change all your passwords, you simply click the Change All Passwords button. This replaces your existing passwords with unique and randomly generated passwords. If you do have two-factor authentication, a pop-up will ask for your code. Of course, that'll be sent to you probably on your smartphone. Now, this service, this feature has only 3 million users. It's based in New York and Paris, and it's free if you use it on a single device. If you want to sync between your multiple devices, it costs about $40 a year, which is a little bit on the high side comparatively speaking, but still that's an affordable price, especially the free on a single device feature. This just sounds fantastic. We'll be looking for users, and I'm sure there'll be reviews out there for this coming out, and we can see what it's really, really like. Now, Joe, you mentioned that if this isn't convenient enough, we may be facing a beautiful future coming soon that involves the end of passwords forever.
The end of passwords, and for a change, companies like Microsoft and Google may actually agree on this future, which is a great development. Now, the technology is called FIDO, which is short for Fast Identification Online. It's an open standard. Chatter about this started back in October, and now the 1.0 version is arriving right now. And Mike, as I mentioned, companies like Microsoft and Google are agreeing here on the approach. Then others are jumping in. Companies like Netflix, Samsung, Qualcomm, Bank of America, PayPal. And I think what's so interesting here, Mike, is on the one hand, the previous story, we talked a little bit about monetizing password management for about $40 per user per year. What the big vendors are basically saying is, you know what? There isn't enough money in password management. What we really want to do is get rid of the passwords so that people can get to their applications more quickly. And if you get to your applications more quickly, you can spend more in e-commerce, and you can consume things and buy things more quickly. So the vendors think they can make up the money that way.
And it also supports fingerprints, voice and facial recognition, and mobile devices. It supports keychain-sized dongles plugged into computers. So it supports existing technologies for security, which is really, really great. It's based on authentication technologies developed by Google and Knock Knock Labs. I've heard of Google. Have you ever heard of Knock Knock? I think I'm saying that right. NOK.
Yeah, you know what? I'm not familiar with Knock Knock, but here's the thing. You and I did not mention Apple in this conversation, and we're going to need Apple to be part of this, correct? I mean, you can't get rid of passwords unless you solve passwords on Macs, iPhones, and the tablets. And basically, Knock Knock, what they've done apparently is they've written to Apple's API and written to the FIDO API and sort of created a middleware here to make sure this technology will work on the Apple hardware, which is great news.
Well, I hope it works as advertised, because I would love to move beyond passwords. I think passwords are clearly problematic and obsolete, and I'm ready to be done with them forever. Well, speaking of security, the security-obsessed Black Phone will soon get an app store filled with privacy and security apps. The Black Phone itself runs a modified version of Android called Private OS. It also comes with apps that enable encrypted phone calls, text messages, and other ways to communicate privately and securely. The Private OS will get a new version in early 2015, which has a feature called Spaces. It gives you separate areas for work and personal. The update will also be accompanied by the App Store. So again, that App Store is coming in early next year. I'm intrigued by this Black Phone, Joe. I don't think I'm ready to give up a standard Android phone or an iPhone, but I have to admit, I basically don't have any secrets. That's a problem. I don't really, it's like I don't have anything to protect, but I love the idea of a hyper secure phone like this.
Yeah, and what's interesting is maybe they're going to carve out a middle market here where you've got the BlackBerries of the world, and you've got Samsung promoting Knox, and then you've got the rest of us, consumers who are not very good at security, and maybe there's some sort of tweener here that goes with the Black Phone without necessarily having to answer to a corporate CIO or a chief information security officer who's demanding that you lock down your mobile devices. This looks like it'll be more of a personal buy. So I'm intrigued by it. I just wonder if they can find a niche between that consumer and the corporate IT department.
Definitely. And of course, the phone has been available since the summer. We've reported on it several times on this show. Well, Joe, Amazon is in the news. It seems like they're in the news every day, and they are definitely in the news today.
Yeah, this is a two-parter. I think this one involves their online moves to speed up commerce, and then their in-the-air moves to speed up commerce. Now, let's start with in the air. Basically, what Amazon has told the FAA, and it's being leaked in the Wall Street Journal and elsewhere, Amazon has gone public with a demand saying, FAA, move more quickly, or we're going to take our drone research and we are going to export it, particularly to the UK. Now, the FAA already has tight mandates on the use of commercial drones. You can't use them. Only a few companies or colleges and universities have gotten a green light from the FAA to use drones commercially in the U.S. And the restrictions are going to get even tighter in 2015, allegedly. So Amazon's concerned. They're saying, you know what? We're going to offshore this if you guys don't get moving. Then the other angle here is how do we speed up everything online? In terms of online, what they're doing now is sort of a bid it now, buy it now approach, where you can go into the Amazon system. And if I have an online store, Mike, and you wanted to lowball me on an offer, you could make an offer on an item in my store, and I could reject it. But if I want to get my inventory going and moving quickly, I could accept your lowball bid. So it's very interesting here. Apple continues to move more quickly online, driving faster and faster inventory churns, including for its sales partners. But then up in the air, they're trying to move inventory even faster with these drones. So big two-part story. We're watching it closely.
And the third part of that two-part story is that they're also trying to move items fast in New York City, where they're looking at embracing bike messengers. Okay, again, that would affect only...
Beautiful day for it, by the way.
Yeah. They lose a few every day. It happens. What are you going to do? You have to, fast delivery isn't easy. Now, one of the things that's interesting about this is they make an offer button that enables this sort of haggling. It essentially brings the real world into Amazon, because these are businesses like categories like fine art, sports and entertainment collectibles, sports memorabilia, that sort of thing, and coin markets. These are sort of industries, I guess you'd call them, that have always had bickering and haggling, not bickering, haggling and sort of negotiation. And so
a bigger button would be nice, though, wouldn't it?
That's right. You're right. I want to chew this person out. And so it's really nice to see, because it enables them to do business online the same way they do it in the real world. And again, this is very different from eBay-style recruiting, as I understand it. Basically, on eBay, you start at a base price, and the bidding brings the price up. With this, you start at a base price, and you bid them down. And so that's a fundamental difference.
It's almost like a reverse auction. Now, of course, if I'm the merchant, if I own the store, I can always say no. There's no harm in saying no. My fear is I see a downside and an upside. The downside is inexperienced retailers. They start adopting the system, and they basically start saying yes to lower and lower prices, and they hurt their own margins and destroy their own business. On the flip side, if you're that merchant and you're responsible and you're able to say no to some of the bids and then take others, maybe at a reasonable rate, you're going to churn your inventory. You're going to turn over your inventory much more rapidly and cause more and more customer engagement. So there actually could be some upside here for the merchants. Definitely.
And in the test that Amazon has conducted, only about a quarter of customer offers are accepted. And so, it's a great option for the merchants, because they can just turn down, it sounds like they're turning down the majority of customer offers. They're not going to sell it at a price that's below what they're willing to spend. Well, in just a sec, we're going to have some email from viewers, and also we have some updates for you. But first, I want to talk about ZipRecruiter, our second sponsor today. ZipRecruiter is fantastic, because if you want to hire the right people, and of course, if you want to succeed in your career or with your business, you have to hire the right people. They make it not only easy and inexpensive to do, but also possible. They enable you to do things in hiring that you couldn't possibly do without ZipRecruiter. Why? Because they actually cast this incredibly wide net to more than 50 job boards. And these include social networks. A lot of the most qualified people are on social networks. You never know where you're going to find that really perfect candidate. And it doesn't matter where they are, because ZipRecruiter will find them wherever they are. And you can post your job in one place, and you're not going to get the candidates that you want. So if you post them to 100+ job sites, these include Craigslist, all the best places, all the places where people are going to be. You don't have to juggle emails or calls to your office. You can screen candidates quickly. They'll actually weed out the genuinely qualified candidates, so you can just spend your time on those, and you don't waste your time on people who are just wasting your time and not really qualified. So find out why ZipRecruiter has been used by more than 200,000 businesses. Right now, our audience can try ZipRecruiter for a free 4-day trial. Just go to ZipRecruiter.com/TNT. That's ZipRecruiter.com/TNT. And we thank ZipRecruiter for their support of Tech News Today. Well, Kamau Mweru sent us an email about the banning of Uber in New Delhi. We talked about this story yesterday, and he said, nice show. So I could not help hearing that you say that charge against Uber in New Delhi to be unfair. And essentially what the story was about, this is me talking now, is that there was a case of a Uber driver who actually raped a a female passenger. And I said that, and after they banned Uber, after this crime occurred, I said that it was unfair for them to do that simply because similar crimes took place in taxis and on buses and other forms of transportation, and they didn't ban those. And I have a sensitivity as a tech journalist to the unfair singling out of technology-oriented things that are singled out for worse treatment than less technologically oriented things. Now, back to the email. He writes, what other proof do you need to show that Uber is too lax with their standards upon hiring him again? The latest headlines concerning Uber have been bad for Uber. They show a consistent disregard for ethics and appear to be all about profits. And just because the technology is new doesn't make it immune to expectations if it's just as bad or even worse than the traditional systems. Perhaps Uber should be proposing to New Delhi about hiring female drivers for female passengers and keep male drivers with male passengers, or better yet, hire an escort for each ride, although this could get expensive. Now, here's my point. Uber does more than traditional taxi services in India to protect against these kinds of abuses. Uber uses the Indian government for background checks, the exact same background check process that's used for taxi drivers. And so it's not like they have an inferior system for choosing drivers. They don't hire the drivers, they're contractors. That's another point that's worth mentioning. You said that they hire drivers. And they provide, unlike regular taxi drivers in India, they provide each driver with a GPS-based iPhone so they can track the whereabouts of these cars. Nobody knows where many Indian regular licensed taxis are because they oftentimes don't have GPS. And so Uber is actually doing more than other forms of transportation, yet they're being singled out. After one crime, they're being essentially banned in New Delhi, which I think is unfair. Not that, obviously this crime has to be prosecuted and such crimes have to be prevented in the future, but just banning the new thing because it's new is not the solution forward. Well, we got some updates for you. Forrester Research predicted today that the number of people using a wearable computer will triple in 2015, and the leader will be Apple, they said. The Apple Watch will gain 10 million users next year, according to the report, which is based on polling data. The wearables category will be more popular in the U.S. than in Europe, they said, and with 45% of Americans saying they intend to embrace wearables versus 32% of Europeans. Now, Joe, I think that's kind of a suspicious set of numbers. I doubt that 42% of Americans know what a wearable is.
You know what, Mike? I don't know. I hate to say it, but I think we are lemmings here in America. And I think so I haven't worn a watch in 20 years. And I hate to admit it. Once the Apple Watch comes, I may be inclined to get one. And, I'm thinking about how can After Nines broadcast this messages out to someone's wrist, to millions of wrists going forward. So I think there may be some reality in these numbers. I'm intrigued.
Yeah, I'm intrigued too. I do believe in the wearables category. And it has to be said that this 10 million Apple Watch figures is probably about a third of some of the more bullish predictions that are out there. And so we'll see. It's a completely unknown world. We don't know if it's going to completely flop or whether it's going to be a runaway hit. It's very, very difficult to tell at this point. We're just going to have to wait and see. But again, it's all going to really happen, I think, right around probably at the end of the first quarter of next year. I think that's really when we're going to be able to tell whether this category is going to launch into the stratosphere or sort of land with a thud. Well, nearly 2 years after promising to offer search, Facebook finally said it'll enable the ability to search Facebook posts, at least for English-speaking Americans using desktop PCs or iPhones. The company promised search for other languages, countries, and Android for later. In the past, you could search only for specific categories of information, but not for the full text of posts. And it also worked on the desktop browser version only. Twitter, of course, launched the ability to search all tweets ever tweeted last month, and Google Plus has had full search for more than 3 years. Well, Tian Van Zyl in Cape Town, South Africa, who previously posted on November 24th that it was the first time he had watched Tech News Today and that it's his new favorite show, posted this picture on Google Plus. Let's have a look at that picture. There we are, Joe Panettieri.
That's a beauty.
Yeah, it looks like I'm singing some sort of hymn or gospel song. It's hard to tell.
Yeah, I think I'm on the keyboards there, I think, too.
Yeah. It's we should go on tour. But nice setup there from South Africa. I think this is the first TNT fan of the day from South Africa. So congratulations to you for being first. We're making history here today, Joe. How do you watch or listen to TNT? Just record a video or take a picture of your setup and post it on Google+, Twitter, or Facebook, and use the hashtag #HowIWatchTNT, and we're going to find it. That's the tech news today. Now, Joe, what's coming up on After Nines?
Actually, we do have something new for After Nines. Coming up at 9:01 Eastern tonight on afternines.com/CEO. If you go there, you'll hear a podcast featuring the CEO of Cloud Nation. And this is an interesting podcast in that the CEO is going to talk about how he launched a desktop as a service business up in Amazon's cloud. So many people are concerned about competing with Amazon. And I think a lot of people are overlooking the opportunity to actually run a business and grow a business on Amazon Web Services. And that's what we'll be covering tonight.
That sounds fantastic. Thank you, Joe, for co-anchoring today. Great job as always. And we'll see you next week.
Sounds great. Thanks, Mike.
All right, Joe. Well, you can subscribe to Tech News Today on Feedly. I love Feedly. It's my favorite RSS reader after Google Reader was killed. Or you can choose some other way to subscribe at twit.tv/TNT. And please send us your thoughts and opinions to TNT@twit.tv. Call us at 260-TNT-SHOW. And don't miss our evening newscast, Tech News Tonight at 4 p.m. Pacific tonight and every weeknight right here on the Twit Network. My name is Mike Elgan. Thank you for tuning in. We will see you tomorrow.